Tech Talks Daily podcast, a place where you can keep informed of the latest business and tech trends by listening to stories of other people in your field and how they are overcoming challenges with emerging technologies. Join me in learning from the guests actionable tips and lessons learned to obtain greater clarity on how you or your business can leverage technology. And today I've invited Pete Sena, co-founder of the global innovation and design experience consultancy Digital Surgeons, onto the podcast. Now, Pete is a design-led entrepreneur, and he loves to partner with forward-thinking, obsessed founders, entrepreneurs and business leaders in an attempt to unlock new possibilities and growth. And for nearly 20 years, Pete has built and led cross-functional teams that have delivered a number of successful multi-channel programs and activations, ranging in scale from venture-backed startups to Fortune 50 companies. But I invited him on the podcast today to talk about that, share his story, and also explore a few other areas such as marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, design thinking, Web3, AI, metaverse, growth mindset, and how to remain curious in this world and ask questions and obtain a design thinking mindset. But before we start today's interview, I just wanted to give a quick mention to our sponsors, because this month the podcast is brought to you by Flipper, which is the #1 marketplace to buy and sell online businesses and startups. So, do you run your own online business? And have you ever considered selling your website, your store, your tech, or your app? Because with world-class combined matching technology, dedicated brokers and end-to-end services, all at the most efficient price, Flipper is making it simple to sell your online business. So to get a free valuation, visit my friends at flipper.com/techtalks, where each month thousands of online business owners exit with Flipper. Again, visit flipper.com/techtalks. So buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you're listening in the world, I'm going to be beaming your ears all the way to Connecticut in the US, where Pete is waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely, Neil. Thanks for asking. It's good to be here. So my name's Pete Sena, and I am a creative entrepreneur, and I've been building creative and design-led businesses for over 17 years. Most recently, I've been doing a lot of work with investing in early stage startups, and I'm really proud of what me and the team have built at Digital Surgeons, which is a brand experience consultancy that's been around for about 17 years now.
And I'm looking forward to finding out more about that. And you did say you're a creative entrepreneur. And I'm curious, if I was to take you way, way, way back, maybe even to your childhood, can you remember a moment that would put you on the path you're on today, or where your passion for technology and entrepreneurship would come from? Or should I say, what's your origin story? Because everyone's got one, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Neil. And I would say it's interesting because no one in my family, I have a podcast called Forward Obsessed, where I interview a bunch of just successful startup founders that have built and exited businesses. And I've always been searching for, what are the roots of entrepreneurship? In their cases, many of the things I've seen come up is, they were part of a family of business owners or people that had started businesses. In my case, it was not remotely like that. So I grew up, my father was very much a blue collar guy. He was in the union. My mom had mostly administrative types of roles in her life and work. So business and entrepreneurship were not something that was, talked at the dinner table per se. So for me, my earliest sort of, I'd say, soiree into business was I loved video games as a kid. I was really, really into video games. I was fascinated with the graphics and just the different stories and those kinds of things. I had no idea that would be such a big trailhead for where my life went. But coming up, I was fascinated with companies like Apple. I was fascinated with companies like Microsoft and just all the techie companies. So video games and tech just always interested me from a young age. And, growing up in Southern Connecticut, I wasn't living in Silicon Valley, wasn't living in any of these, innovation hotbeds at the time. Right. So ultimately, a lot of where I took my inspiration from was from some of these really prolific tech leaders, seeing people like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates on TV or watching interviews. Again, this is, pre-Google YouTube era, right?
Yeah.
I just turned 40 recently. So to give you a sense of my age. So at the time, you'd see things in magazines, you'd see things on the television. And I'd say it was that mix of tech and video games that ultimately got me interested in what led me to what I know of today as branding and marketing and entrepreneurship. But back then it was just really, really interesting things that were happening in technology, on the internet, with video games. So probably a less wild or surprising origin story than some folks have that you have on your show here. But that's the 100% no BS truth for how I got started.
And I absolutely love that. And you'd be amazed how many people I have on this podcast, how many were influenced by video games, whether it be the Commodore 64 days, the Atari 2600 to Nintendo and the games that we've got now. I always find it quite ironic that most parents out there are saying, video games are bad for kids. But most people that I speak to, some of the biggest business leaders in the world, all came from, or something lit a spark in them from playing those video games in their formative years.
For sure.
And what was your games and platform, just out of interest? So you said you're coming up 40 or just 40. Any games that spring to mind?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the big question is what games don't spring to mind. So as a young kid, obviously Nintendo was super, super popular. So I sort of got the bug around the Super Nintendo days, the Super Nintendo, N64. And, Nintendo still to this day has just done a brilliant job with their intellectual property. You think about games that incorporate Mario and Luigi. I saw that they've got an upcoming animated movie coming up that's actually going to incorporate Mario and Luigi. Disney just incorporated a whole Nintendo exhibit into one of their theme parks. So I think what's really interesting for me coming up, it was a lot of the Mario platformer games. And what I didn't know back then, I thought these games were fun and playful. I love games like Contra or Final Fight, which then kind of went on to like Mortal Kombat. So what I didn't know then, but I know now because I dig into these stories, is the one thing that was true for me about all the games I like to play, whether it was Final Fantasy, the RPG game, or Mario, the platformer, or Final Fight, whatever the game was that I was into, it was less about the type of game, right? I wasn't a big sports game fan. I did love the occasional racing game. But what was interesting, if I look back now, is they all had one thing in common. And it was the hero in the story was an underdog. And I've always fancied myself as an underdog. I always root for the underdog in the movies and the books. And I still to this day consider myself an underdog. And what's interesting is looking back, that was one common thread that I didn't see then, but I definitely see now, which is any of the games where you can be the underdog to sort of, take on the evil villain or take on the big endless quest. That's a lot of the parallels to how I think about the world and how I think about business. But those were some of the games that came to mind.
Absolutely love that. And of course, that path would eventually lead you to becoming the co-founder of global innovation and design experience consultancy called Digital Surgeons, which is a great name in itself. But can you tell me more about the story behind the company and the problems you set out to solve with tech?
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds so much more fancy when you say it. I probably have an accent to you, but I love your accent. I feel like everything just sounds better. I'm hanging on every word here, Neil. So that's great. So yeah, so Digital Surgeons, just at the core, just first, well, what the hell is it, right? So a lot of our clients call us DS, but really what Digital Surgeons does is we help businesses create digital first brands. And what does that mean? Well, we use the tools in the toolkit of branding and storytelling and experience design to help people stand out and ultimately help them win in their market. So what I tell people a lot is what's different about us as an agency or a consultancy is that we are a group of makers, marketers, and entrepreneurs. And what I think differentiates us in a big way is that we're not afraid to put our money where our mouth is. And many of the things that we've built have been our own investments, right? So we've built a lot of businesses. And why I think that is interesting to a lot of our clients, some of the things that we hear from our clients is that they love that we're also building businesses because that gives us a ton of empathy for what they're going through. I think it's really easy. I've worked with a lot of folks that are at big agencies or consultancies that are not afraid to spend their clients' money, not afraid to, pitch things that will win awards, but don't move the needle. And we focus on really, how do you build your business? How do you build your brand? And at the end of the day, we're a very results-driven agency. What we tell people a lot is that we design demand. So that's ultimately what we do and the problems that we set out to solve. We use a mix of marketing, design, technology to solve those problems. But really, I would say the thing I love about what we do, fast forward 17, 18 years later from when I started it, is we're helping some incredible clients to tell their stories, to launch their products and their services and experiences. So for anyone that's listening to this, I know you have a lot of people on your podcast that have, VC backgrounds. We've done a lot of work for VC-backed startups. We've done a lot of work for private equity firms, for large brands and small brands. And really what we've got a lot of heart for is helping people win in this digital first economy.
What a great story. And what you were saying about the accent a few moments ago, it's quite funny because I'm in envy of your accent there. So it's funny how we both think the opposite, and they always say the grass is always greener. But I'd trade accents with you. So if there's anything we can do to do that, then I'd gladly do that. One of those body swap movies or something. But of course, everything you've said there, I'm curious, just to bring it to life to a certain degree. Do you have any examples of how you've helped a brand or business and their teams move them forward with technology or design thinking? Because I think it's something that every business leader is exploring at the moment. It'd be great to bring that to life with some of the work you've done.
No, I'd love to. And one of the things we talked about video games a lot, right?
Yeah.
So let me just dig into that for a second. So we've had the opportunity to work on a number of different video games. One of the things I'm proud of, because a lot of young people tend to get excited when I tell them this, is one of the most popular games in the world is a game called Fortnite, which went on to take the world by storm for a million reasons. It's created by Epic Games. Epic Games was a client of ours years ago, and we launched the first ever microsite and website for Fortnite way back in the day, before it turned into the incredible, massive success that it did. So it's funny when you work on things that come full circle later, but it's just funny on that video game thing. But one specific thing, just to answer your question, I'm really, really proud of the work that we've done for Lovesac, the furniture company. And we've helped Lovesac for a number of years. Most recently launch a really incredible transformational product, which is called the Stealth Tech. And Stealth Tech, what Lovesac does is, if you don't know Lovesac, you basically would say, oh, they make couches and they make beanbag chairs, right? If you're not aware of it. But if you know Lovesac, you know that what they launch is something called the Sactional. And the Sactional is this amazing thing. Specifically, the Lovesac Stealth Tech product that we helped to launch and bring to market. It's an incredible product because it's got immersive sound. It's got the ability to wirelessly charge your phone. You can completely reconfigure I'm going to say couch just for everyone listening, but really if my client heard me say couch and not Sactional, they would probably get mad at me, because they've really created a category of one, which is something I talk a lot about and I'm happy to dig into with you as well. But they've created a category of one in the furniture space. This is a product that's great for people of all ages. You can completely reconfigure it whenever you're changing around your living room or whatever room you have the product in. But what I love about the Stealth Tech product is Lovesac is such a forward-thinking company. We talk a lot about being forward obsessed, and I love Lovesac because their people are incredible. Their founder is just a visionary. And what they did is they partnered with Harman Kardon. And if you don't know, Harman Kardon is one of the top high-end audio companies in the world. And they created this connected couch essentially. And it's got 4D audio. The fabric is specifically tuned to the audio profile. It's got built-in wireless charging, because how annoying it is that when you're, sitting on the couch watching, a big game or watching an amazing movie, you're at the edge of your seat and your phone's about to die and someone's texting you. And you're like, oh shit, I have to get up. I have to pause it. I have to plug in my phone and go find a power charger. It's so annoying, right? Yeah. So nowadays we live in this world where our phones are an extension of us. So what the Stealth Tech product does is it's got integrated wireless charging. And what I love, one of the lines that gets used a lot in the campaign, if you've seen the websites or the TV commercials, is don't just hear it, feel it. And it's so amazing. You'll be sitting on this couch, whether you're playing a video game or watching a movie, the audio takes you into the experience because all of the speakers are embedded in the couch. And the sound and the feel, it's a next level thing. And you hear me getting excited about it. And one of the things that I'd say is one of my superpowers, and certainly a big thing that we lean into here at Digital Surgeons, is we believe in caring greatly and being obsessed with our customers, because the obsession is what really helps you live the life of their end customer. And that's one of the reasons I think we've been successful, is just we get ourselves in it. So the first time I sat on this thing, I knew that this was just a superior product and a really great company with great people. So that's something I'm really proud of. We've been working with them for a number of years. As I mentioned, we've launched a couple of products for them, and just what they've done. If you haven't checked out the Lovesac Stealth Tech product, definitely check it out. It's, in my opinion, it's the Ferrari of couches. There's zero question about it. And they call it the Sactional because of just how unique it is. So I can go on for hours about that. Again, they did not pay me to say this, but I'm just truly a fan. I've, got one in our office, I can't recommend them enough to people because, especially as a new parent, my son's about 1.5 years old now. I'm realizing that it's really impossible to have nice things with young kids, spilling things everywhere. And what's great about the Stealth Tech and any Lovesac product, just to be clear, is the removable slip covers. And it's really important for parents or messy people like myself. You get to still have that really, really high end, amazingly comfortable couch Sactional, but you can also change out the slip covers. And I think that that's a unique differentiator because it's hard to have premium comfort and configurability all in one piece of furniture. And I think that Lovesac has mastered that. And I continue to marvel in it because, again, I'm a digital guy, Neil, right? Like I love tech and video games and design. I don't know the first thing about making great physical products. So I always marvel in those things.
And something else that a lot of people are marveling around at the moment is the Web3. There's so much hype around it at the moment. A lot of people excited, a lot of people nervous, a lot of people cynical, a lot of people a little bit concerned. And you wrote a great article on winning the Web3 Wild Wild West by betting on the builders. Can you expand on that for people listening that haven't seen that article? Because it was one of the things that when I was researching it really stood out for me and quite excited to talk about.
Well, Neil, first and foremost, thank you for reading my articles. I will add you to the list of you and my mom for people that read my articles. But yeah, that was a fun article to write because I think what's interesting about Web3 right now is typically when people hear Web3, there's 3 to 5 words that come to mind, right? One of them is blockchain. Yeah. Another one is crypto. Another one is metaverse, right? With all the stuff with Mark Zuckerberg and the metaverse and the gaming and that sort of thing. So Web3 is I could spend hours just unpacking that, but just to really simplify Web3, the world that we know today is very much a centralized world, right? You and I are here today, tuning in on, Zoom, which is, runs off of a series of centralized servers in the cloud that we all connect to, that's owned by Zoom and probably sitting on top of an Amazon Web Service or a Google Cloud service or one of those things. And this sort of world we live in today is a very centralized world where we rely on big tech to have all the plumbing work. And I think the magic of Web3 is all about the concept of decentralization or decentralized. And decentralization brings up a lot of different interesting things for the world. But I would say the 2 biggest things that are interesting coming out of Web3, the sort of first principles of it, if you will, is one, when you have a decentralized technology, it is not as reliant or beholden to a corporate overlord. Now, for the VCs that are listening to this, many of you that are investing in Web3, they know already that if you follow the money and all that, it all gets back to the same thing. But this is not an episode about capitalism. This is an episode about technology as it comes to Web3, right? So really Web3 simply, it's a decentralized technology, typically powered by the blockchain, and they use something called smart contracts to be able to interact. So again, I do a lot with this, so it's always hard to explain it very, very easily. But why people should care about Web3 is it's the future of commerce, it's the future of community, it's the future of brands and businesses in a big way. What's so special about the blockchain is like it's an immutable ledger, right? So it's the way I explain it to people that are not super techie is think of a giant shared spreadsheet or a giant Google sheet, just a big spreadsheet that everyone can write to and add new records, but no one can change. And the power of that is if you think about like when you buy a car, you probably, if it's a used car, you want to get a Carfax done on it. Why do you want to get a Carfax done on it? You want to see who's owned the car. Has it been in any accidents? What are the things about it? Just to make sure you're doing your diligence. The nice thing about the smart contract is essentially a type of technology that enables you to do things on this blockchain that I just mentioned, this immutable ledger, that's permanent, right? So they call it a trustless protocol. The reason it's trustless is because you and I can't funge it. We can't change it. So the benefit to that is it changes the concept of ownership. It changes the concept of digital goods and services, because now they have a paper trail that can't be forged. So that's going to change everything. It's going to change the way that we buy things in the future, right? Imagine buying a car or a home or a piece of real estate, and you can understand the entire chain of custody to who had it, who built the land. Imagine pharmaceuticals and drug companies. Right now, as an example, in India and other parts of the world, there's a lot of products, drugs, et cetera, pharmaceutical drugs, antibiotics, et cetera, that are forged and they're not the real thing. So imagine being able to go back and track every ingredient, everything, to make sure that something is truly what it says it is. And why in the article I wrote, Bet on the Builders, is that it's the Wild Wild West right now. And what I mean by the Wild Wild West is we see people like Sam Bankman-Fried, who was just arrested in the Bahamas, I believe. And this was a young man who, using these technologies, was doing some very, very amazing, but also very illegal things. And as a result of it, ultimately crashed a lot of people's worlds. He essentially was the Bernie Madoff of the modern digital economy in many ways, because of what he did. And I say that because I think this technology is amazing. We have to bet on the builders, because it's going to continue to change the world for how we buy things, how we connect with each other. And it's so much bigger than just the blockchain. It's so much bigger than cryptocurrency or metaverse and smart contracts. And again, I hope that answers it. It's an interesting angle to come in. And the sort of thesis of the article that I wrote, and would love for the audience to check it out, is we have to go into it understanding that everything is so new right now, Neil. And it's so new that there's going to be a lot of charlatans. There's going to be a lot of snake oil salespeople that are out there. There's going to be a lot of companies that come and go and disappear. But if we stick with it, fundamentally, I believe that the concepts of Web3, concepts like decentralization, concepts like blockchain, concepts like smart contracts, these things are going to completely transform society, but it's going to take a long time for these things to get more mature in nature. And I think with that, you have to be careful, because it's easy. One day you can buy a picture of a monkey or an NFT or a non-fungible token, right? And one day you might buy that for $50 in US dollars, or, a fraction of an ETH or Ethereum. And the next day that thing could be worth millions of dollars. And then a few months later, it can be worth less than $100, right? Yeah. So like anything, markets go up and markets go down. They're extremely volatile. So what I always say to people is, as we say a lot in the Web3 world, DYOR, or do your own research, because it's really easy to look to make a quick buck. I mean, there's all these stories of these young people who bought a meme coin like Dogecoin or Bitcoin or any of these different technologies or cryptocurrencies, and they made millions of dollars. And then you hear these just really sad stories where, like anything, people are losing their shirts and their homes and that sort of thing. So again, bet on the builders. It's going to take some time, but I'm really long and bullish on Web3. I would strongly encourage people who are interested in it. Don't let all this up and down cryptocurrency, the fraud, all that sort of thing. Don't let that pull the wool over your eyes to think that this is not great technology. It's going to be transformational, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, 100% with you. And it's so much bigger than the cryptocurrencies as well, Web3, when you look at all the different elements. And I'm curious, what are the big tech trends that excite you right now? Because your passion for this subject really comes across in this podcast today. But what is it that excites you, and what tech trends are you going to be looking out for next year?
The first thing I want to say to anyone listening to this is that I am obsessed with helping people grow their brands and grow their businesses. And I want to do that in the smartest, fastest, most effective ways possible. And you can't talk today about smart growth, fast growth, and big growth without thinking about these two big macro trends. One is AI, or artificial intelligence, and two is the creator economy. And I think these two macro forces, AI or artificial intelligence, is giving new ways for us to automate things, right? To automate the creation of art, to automate the creation of ideas, to automate the processes and manufacturing and all the different steps, right? AI and machine learning is already completely changed the way that we as a society operate, and it will only continue to change more. And then you have the creator economy or the gig economy, essentially where people are changing the relationship they have with work, changing the relationship they have with business. You have in some cases young creators that have built incredible viral communities on platforms like YouTube or TikTok. And now they're making far more income on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, yearly basis than some people who have worked at corporations for 20, 30 years and have climbed the proverbial ladder. So I think these two big macro trends of AI and creator economy, I think are really interesting tailwinds that can help people to build their businesses and brands faster. More importantly, I think they're creating lots of new constructs or lots of new businesses. I think I was reading the other day, Neil, that more than 1,000 startups in the past 60 days just sprang up as new micro products using AI, specifically OpenAI's GPT-3, which if you're not living under a rock, you've probably seen the GPT-3 stuff with just being able to ask it any question and have it magically do everything from giving you a romantic comedy script or an Instagram post down to the ingredients for a great, great meal. So there you go.
Yeah, I was playing with that just a couple of days ago. It's quite mind blowing the things it can. I know it's in its very early stages, but the promise of what it can deliver is already there, isn't it? And it really makes you think differently and how much quicker. And again, I don't think it's a case of replacing writers or replacing content creators, but it's more enhancing it, enable you to work quicker and create more content, I would say. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. I think people who don't understand things, we fear what we don't understand. Yeah. And what I tell people a lot is I believe creativity and curiosity are broken in business. Yeah. And I believe we need to lean into and be more curious. The painter hated the photographer hated the Photoshopper. Yeah. And now people are hating all this AI created art. They're a little bit outraged for it. And in some cases, it's rightfully so. But I think instead of us fearing that the machines are going to take over and have this dystopian reality where the world, goes down the toilet, I like to lean into it as how can these tools be new tools in our toolbox as entrepreneurs, as creators, as marketers, whatever it is that we're doing. I think that it's a unique opportunity for us to level up our society because we live in the knowledge economy today, right? This no longer is a world where I don't think anyone can say they enjoy getting up in the morning and doing repetitive, low-skilled jobs. Yeah. I don't think anyone enjoys that. I think many people have to do that because of challenges or opportunities that they had coming up. Maybe they didn't have access to education or these types of resources. So I think what this is going to do is societies, nation states, governments, we all need to develop our workforces, develop our societies, develop our communities in a way where we can create more opportunity for people and let machines, robots, cobots, algorithms, all these different technologies, let them automate the mundane so we can reimagine interesting things. So I'm really, really bullish on these technologies. I'm working with them every single day. And it's revitalizing me. It's making things that used to be old and boring, new and exciting. So if you're anti-AI, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to try to change your mind. There's some amazing stuff happening. And I think, with all the good, I'm an optimist, Neil, if you can't tell, but there's certainly a lot of scary, bad things that will come from these technologies, but I'm really bullish on them.
No, 100% with you on that. And as you said, you are an optimist, but also I think you used another word several times there, which was curious and curiosity. So I'm curious myself. What keeps your open-mindedness alive, and how do you stay curious to solve some of those problems that might keep you up at night? Because it is a daily battle, especially as you get older, in remaining curious, remaining open-minded, because that's the only way you're going to fix the modern problems. But how do you do that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's an organization called the Right Question Institute, and they've done some really interesting research where after the age of 9, there is a rapid decline for the number of why-based questions that we as humans ask. Yeah. I personally believe that the education system is broken, and a lot of things in our society are broken. And in that, we become less curious. We become more herd-like and sort of follow what the leaders are. For every million posts on Instagram, I'd say single-digit percentages of them are unique content, and then the rest are just derivative copycats. And I say that to say, like, not to insult anyone, but rather to say that we lose our curiosity. The most important question that we can ask is why. And it sounds trite, again, anyone that's not big in design thinking like me is probably asking, well, that's a really basic question. But the more we ask why, the more we sort of follow our intellectual curiosity, the more that I think things can get more interesting. So for me, I find myself being more curious now than ever. And really what it comes down to is, I think a little bit of it is that as a serial entrepreneur, and I say serial entrepreneur because what that means is not a fancy title. What that means for me is I love starting businesses, and I love starting businesses, investing in businesses, working with businesses. I consider myself an entrepreneur's entrepreneur in many ways. And with that, I'd say that really helps my ADHD with always listening for signals in the noise, always looking at patterns, following the thread. So what I think people can do is, no matter what they're interested in, I mean, it can be anything from plants and gardening and botany to AI and machine learning, whatever you're interested in, or home brewing coffee, like whatever it is, follow that intellectual curiosity. Ask, why do people do things this way? And then when they answer, ask why they do it that way, and just keep going down that thread, and you'll discover things. I think we live in a world where we can Google anything and go down the rabbit hole. So I encourage anyone, no matter what their curiosity is, go down the rabbit hole and read things, watch things, listen to things, experiment things, take things. And that's going to keep you young. It's going to keep you fresh. It's going to keep, your brain forming new connections and activating neuroplasticity in the mind, which, there's a lot of studies now that are saying that the more we become lifelong learners, the more that results in lower risk for things like Alzheimer's and those types of things. So I think that that is ultimately what keeps me going, is that I've got this curiosity and open-mindedness. I'm constantly consuming and connecting. By consuming, I don't just mean binge watching Netflix. By consuming, I mean, reading and watching and listening to, great podcasts like your podcast, Neil, right? Like there's lots of things out there that I think we can do at any age, no matter how busy we are. For example, for many of us that might be, parents of young kids, we know it gets difficult to sit down and read a book. Well, when I'm taking my kid for a walk and I put him in the stroller, I'll listen to a podcast, so I'm still consuming things, or I'll listen to an audiobook. So there's a lot of reasons for us to make excuses to say we don't have time, or we don't have focus, or whatever it is. But I believe that if we hold on to our curiosity, if we keep it sacred as a part of everything we do, not just our work, not just our life, but if we keep curiosity as a constant in our life, possibilities open up in a big way. One of my favorite books out there, Neil, is a book by Liz Gilbert called Big Magic. And what she posits in the book, and she goes through tons of examples of it, is when we live a life of creativity, when we live a life of curiosity, so many more possibilities can happen. So I encourage folks to do that. I also think that it's had a positive impact on my mental health with being able to, be curious about things like infrared sauna, which is a thing that I've been nerding out on recently, or meditation. So I think there's lots of ways where our curiosity can lead us down very interesting pathways if we go through it through the right mindset.
Yeah, and I'm listening to that book as well, Big Magic, on Audible at the moment. It's really is fantastic. So I urge anyone listening to check that out. And you are a guy that practices what you preach as well on the curiosity thing, because I also believe you're a very busy guy because you also got your own podcast too. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, well, one, again, I'm eternally grateful for the amazing teams that I have, that I work alongside of every single day. The only way that I'm able to indulge in all these different curiosities and businesses is because of the amazing team that I have. So for any entrepreneur out there, or anyone out there, it's not what you can do alone. It's what you can do when you focus and have amazing people around you. So you're absolutely right. I have a podcast. It's called Forward Obsessed. You can check it out at forwardobsessed.com or tune into it on any podcast. I created that because of a deep curiosity. One of the curiosities I had is I was really inspired by podcasts like Tim Ferriss and Shane Parrish from Farnham Street, and a lot of these great podcasts, or Guy Raz's How I Built This. And one of the questions I asked is, what are the patterns of entrepreneurship, specifically successful entrepreneurship? What are the pitfalls? What are the pivots? What are the things that they don't write about in the storybooks? And I started finding and reaching out to interesting entrepreneurs, specifically people who had built businesses, sold them, exited them, took them public. And the curiosity stemmed forward obsessed for me was, how do I tap into these people's mindsets, their methods, their skill sets? How do I read what they read? And, like the old adage says, if you want to learn about the jungle, you don't read about the jungle, you go to the jungle. So for me, going to the jungle in this case is talking to some of these entrepreneurs, understanding their practices, whether they're self-care practices, their investment practices, their learning practices, their leadership practices, and really learning from them and finding ways to throw them into the proverbial pot and play and sort of see what comes out in the stew, if you will. So yeah, I hope that answers the question, Neil.
100% really does. And I also read that you're a venture mentor at Yale University and an entrepreneur in residence at your alma mater, the University of Connecticut, in the technology incubation program. So you can tell me more about that, and also the importance to yourself for giving back and lifting that next generation up too.
Absolutely. Well, one, clearly you and your team do some amazing research. So I used to be part of a program called YEI, which was the Yale Entrepreneurial Institute. They have since now rebranded under a new moniker called Sci-City. So I'm not working as closely with Yale today as I was previously, though I'm really excited for Yale Ventures, which is under the stewardship of Josh Jabal, who formerly ran the state of Connecticut here, and he's just a brilliant mind. So I can't wait to see what comes out of Yale next, and deeply plugged into it because as a business owner here in New Haven, we own a tech innovation campus called District, which has got a large co-working space. So as a New Haven business owner, I'm really bullish on New Haven, which is obviously where Yale is, for those that might not know. So I did do a lot of entrepreneur residence, innovation, entrepreneurship coaching at their YEI program a number of years ago. And now, most recently, the past few years, I've been doing a lot of work at UConn, specifically with two of their programs. One is the TIP program, which is the Technology Incubation Program. And the second is the CCEI program, which is the Connecticut Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And UConn has just really continued to blossom and transform in terms of their investments in innovation, their investments in entrepreneurship. So if you have a business, if you're investing in other businesses, if you're just looking for amazing talent, I would highly recommend folks get in touch with the UConn TIP program, or I'm happy to connect folks if they want to reach out to me. I love the work I'm doing there. As for why I do that work, I purposely did the program as what's called the Gratis Entrepreneur Residence Program. And the reason I did that was I didn't want to get paid. For me, I want to put goodness out in the world. When I was coming up, I had a very bad experience at UConn. I actually started my company in a UConn dorm room, which most people don't know. And I got zero help from UConn back in the day. Again, the organization has changed tremendously. The university is fantastic today. I wish I could be a student at UConn today. But back then, no one helped me. And when I was coming up as an entrepreneur, no one wanted to provide me with advice. I couldn't get loans from banks. They always say, like, everyone wants to give you an umbrella. No one will give you an umbrella when it's sunny out. No one will give you an umbrella when it's rainy out. They'll only give you the umbrella when it's sunny out. And what I mean by that specifically is, like, it's easy to get a business loan once you're already successful, once you already have, the credentials and the track record. It's easy to have doors open for you once you've been successful. When people are getting started in business today, it can be very discouraging. It was very discouraging for me. Again, I'm the son of a blue collar family, so I didn't know what these things are. I made millions of mistakes. So what I do now, why I work with groups like Yale, why I do a lot of work with different youth programs and those kinds of things, is I want to be able to show people the mistakes I've made so that they can hopefully avoid them or find their own path. Because I've gotten to a place of privilege and success that I'm really proud of, and I do not ever take for granted. But I want to put that out there in the world so that future generations can really get to a success rate faster. Most people would say like that. Everyone's an overnight success. I'm a 17-year overnight success. So there was definitely no overnight success there. So love helping people, love mentoring, and really just trying to give back, because it was frustrating when I was getting started and I couldn't get the support of banks or mentors or advisors. No one would talk to me. And now it's like, the door's open. I'm on podcasts and doing these things. So I want to give back. I love giving back. I love helping people. Young entrepreneurs energize me. So that's my reason for being there, and my resin ditch are around that.
Awesome. Love that. Now, some of the biggest names in business, VC funding and tech have either been guests or listened to this podcast. So if there is a person that you'd love to have a private breakfast or lunch with, who would it be and why? Because he or she might just be listening to this and we can see what we can manifest here. But who would you choose?
I love that you said manifest. This is a tough one. So I would say one of the books that changed my life was The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, one of the partners at Andreessen Horowitz. So would love to meet Ben one day, because I just think that his words and just how human he is in that book, Hard Thing About Hard Things. I'm a big fan of what him and his partners at Andreessen Horowitz have built. So I think that we could have a pretty spirited conversation, which would probably be an equal mix of flattering and hopefully some inspiration for Ben as well. I'd say a close second to that, because you say VC, is I've recently become a bit enchanted over Bill Gurley, specifically from Benchmark Capital. I love their investment thesis. I've loved what I've read and heard about them. So I don't know Bill or Ben personally, but would love to share a meal or a coffee or a beverage with them at some point in the future. I love that you're trying to manifest that for me, Neil, because one of the people I always wanted to meet was Steve Jobs. I was always fascinated by Steve Jobs. I actually have been able to work with people who have worked with him before or have been in the room with him before. But unfortunately, by the time I started to rise up and start building businesses, Steve had already passed and was taken from us. So yeah, thanks for helping me manifest that. Ben or Bill, if you're listening to this, let's chat, because I've got a lot for you.
Well, we'll send that out into the ether. We've asked the universe. Just let me know if it does respond. But before I let you go, we've covered a lot in a short amount of time here today. So if anyone wanted to check out some of the articles we've talked about, the work that you're doing, ask your team a question, find out more about your podcast, etc., what's the best starting point for everything?
That is a fantastic question. So I'd say if you want to learn more about the work I'm doing with digital surgeons, you can go to digitalsurgeons.com. If you want to learn more about the musings that I have, you can sign up for my newsletter, which is on petesena.com. I do a twice monthly newsletter where I curate interesting thoughts, inspirations, musings, and resources for entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders. So I would love you folks to check that out. I'm also very active on Twitter and LinkedIn. So Pete Sena on both of those platforms. I respond to every message. So would love to hear from folks there. And just want to say thanks again, Neil, for having me on the show. I love what you're building and can't wait to see your future episodes with other guests.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today. As I said, we've covered so much from marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, design thinking, tech, Web3, AI, metaverse, growth mindset, and even had time to manifest something for the future too. But more than anything, just thanks for sitting down, sharing your story. It'd be great to stay in contact with you, get in touch with you again next year, see how things are evolving for you. But just thank you for today.
I'd love that. Have a wonderful rest of the day, Neil.
Wow, another great guy there and a great story. And I just love, and I think it's great to explore how to maintain curiosity and remain open-mindedness, because I think you need that stuff to solve real problems. And also that design thinking mindset and the difference that can make in creating new solutions and products, etc. But as always, this is not my area of expertise, so I invite you to come on here and share your story, share your insights, your experiences. I want to hear from you. I know that every podcast you listen to will have a message from your host telling you to please leave a rating and review. But in a world where we're all ruled by algorithms, it really does help the show reach more listeners. So please, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a review. I always like to finish every episode by saying technology works best when it brings people together. And the fact that you tune in every single day further proves that point. So I hope you'll join me again tomorrow. But a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.